And so we thank you for joining us and let's get started. So we do have an agenda to share just to break down, hopefully within these 45 minutes, what to expect in this first briefing about the laws that impact us. First, to learn a little bit more about the coalition, our advocacy and policy efforts, as well as our education task force. We want to understand how the Illinois General Assembly, which is the state's legislative branch, makes policy and how do we have a say in that process? Of course, the year is about three-quarters done with. There has been much legislation that has passed, but for this organization, it's been around for 5 years. So much that we supported, and we definitely want to share those particular laws, how they impact us, and definitely how you can stay involved. And then, of course, again, as mentioned earlier, there's a call to action, a very urgent one. And we'll be talking about how we can support our students, our elderly, or those who are loved ones who are sick in hospitals, as well as those who are incarcerated and deserve care, particularly through access to religious dietary meals. Okay. So let's get started. As we are an organization that serves not only the Muslim community, but all Illinoisans, one of the questions that we continuously get to answer is exactly who are Muslim Americans. And a lot of times people forget that the story of this faith community goes back well over 400 years before the founding of what is now the United States, before the understanding of what is the so-called New World. And this is something that we know that is very integral to the entire American story. So this is something that we serve as a basis, that our very presence dictates that laws should be made with us and not just simply about us. And so we always want to make sure that part of our work when it comes to policy making, when it comes to community organizing, that we understand not only what our story means, but what it signifies. And so if we go to the next slide, one of the things that came from the work of the Muslim Civic Coalition is the Illinois Muslim Report that was released in 2022. For that report, one of the things that we discovered is that if you look at every single state in the union, all 50 states, that the Muslim community, if you measure by per capita, Illinois, out of all, ranks first, has the largest per capita Muslim community in the country. What that means is you're more likely to meet a Muslim, work alongside a Muslim, shop next to a Muslim, everything that you can imagine in everyday life. You'll likely run into a Muslim throughout the state. So not only greater Chicagoland, but we're talking about communities downstate in Rockford, Springfield, Carbondale, Bloomington Normal, Champaign-Urbana, Quad Cities. So there's so many different communities where the Muslim community is very well represented. And by all means, this is something that we want to acknowledge with legislators. Keep a focus on how we create laws, because it's a prominent community that's represented here in the United States. Looking for slides to move next. Next slide, please. So some of the things that is in the Muslim report, we wanted to understand how our community looks, how it feels about their lives here in the United States. Next slide, please. And so we checked with different ways of understanding our experiences here in this country. And so especially when we talk about policy, there's so much that's misunderstood about the Muslim community, but we look at how it compares to the general public. Oftentimes, it's not too much of a difference. So here are two examples of where the Muslim community is represented in our broader community. So here we see the political affiliations. Oftentimes it's mistaken that Muslims only work with one particular party over the other. And our charge to elected officials is do not underestimate what it means for the Muslim community to have those conversations and to be sure to include us in policy making. So in this case, it's a bit more balanced that you see, say, than the general public population. And that is something that should be a key factor when we are connecting with elected officials, and they should be connecting with us. In the second graph here, what you're seeing is the full gamut of all the different work sectors where the Muslim community is present and vibrantly contributing. And this is something too that is often forgotten about the Muslim community. We're not strangers in terms of making this country work, and particularly our own communities, our own state. And so this is something that we also really press to elected officials. Think of us, or what it means to be a seat at the table, to be able to share our experiences and our ideas that make our community stronger, to make the state more vibrant and an actual beacon for all other people to come visit, work, live, and be thriving. Next slide. And so one of the critical things that is really always of discovery for any demographer is looking at, how vibrant the community is in terms of their age dynamics, and how they're often looking at certain trends in terms of policy making. And the Illinois Muslim community, on average, it has a younger population compared to the broader general public. What that means is that we have an emerging, growing community that will be very much instrumental in the tax base, that's instrumental in our institutions such as our schools, our libraries, our hospitals, what it means for the buying power, and also the influence on how things just work. And if there's not a connection or any type of engagement and outreach with this vibrant faith community that's growing, then there's a missing opportunity for Illinois to be a much better state to live in. All the while, we cannot ignore the fact that discrimination is still something that the Muslim community really faces. And one of the areas that our organization is very much sensitive to is the impact of mental health. So this was one of the several questions that we asked regarding to broader healthcare, and just to zero in on the many reasons why the Muslim community, some members do not seek it. The largest one for the print may be too small, saying that 35% is too expensive, but the respondents of the survey were able to select more than one answer. And a lot of it still is centering on the difficulty, as with many other communities, to seek help when it comes to mental health. And so we definitely want to identify issues such as these as we spotlight what's important for our elected officials to come about. So when we talk about policy making, it's definitely a process that involves a lot of conversations, a lot of learning. And so we want to demonstrate the type of laws that come about. If you hit next slide, please. So over the course of several past few years, there have been efforts from this policy team that make sure that we can listen and hear what are important issues to the Muslim community, but we also listen to all of our fellow Illinois residents. Why? Because many of our issues are the same. Despite sometimes it's misunderstood that, what's happening down in East St. Louis may not have something relevant to me, is actually opposite of the truth. And so many of the bills that we work on ultimately come together with other partners and allies so we can all build a stronger, sound community and state. And so these are examples of bills that have now become state law. Each and every one of these have been passed by the state legislature and the Illinois General Assembly, and also are now in effect. Just some of the bills that you see here, for example, where we're talking about the contributions and history of Muslims in America, just like we pointed to earlier at the top of the event, the Muslim history is very much an integral part of this country's history. And when our students are in school, they should definitely know that the Muslim community has done vibrant, very awesome things that contribute to what is now this United States of America. Another good one is the excuses and all these other ways of excusing absences for the Muslim community for religious reasons. So oftentimes our students are excluded to participate in certain activities, but often may be punished or some type of reprimanding from being engaged with whatever the activities are. And so now students by law cannot be penalized if they have been excused for some religious reasons, such as during Ramadan during the fast. There are other ways too for Muslims to still catch up with work, test, and things of that sort. And so we now have these laws to make sure that one's faith is not being penalized in school, work, and other spaces. So just showing how all those laws, how did they come to be? And so these are the different phases that we make sure that we can do to build up into what you saw as those laws and examples. So the very first phase, and this is actually will be one of them, throughout the chat, if you can, please share ideas about policy that you may have, bills that you think that should be written. And this is the way we build our policy agenda. So we make sure that we can, not only in this forum here, but going to different masajid, going to different mosques, different community organizations, and just one-on-one conversations to be able to hear personal stories and understand why these laws are needed. Once we're able to hear all what you have to say, we go into phase two, where we actually really think of these are issues that our community is really strong and passionate about. Let's do the research and let's write these bills. And so when we write these bills, we also want to keep in mind what is advantageous not only for our community, but could be beneficial for all residents. Once we're able to write the bill draft, then we're able to identify a legislator who is passionate and also has either expertise or some personal connection for their constituents in becoming the chief sponsor of that legislation. Right after that, it is really the bulk of the time from January into June, where we're organizing and working with legislators to understand the bills, to have any type of concerns addressed, be able to improve and strengthen these bills, and hopefully get them to pass. They go through different processes where each time the bill can be heard, debated, improved, and hopefully get majority to pass with yes votes. And once we do that, we invite the community to share their voices, letting them know that they can fill out witness slips, but also make sure that they can share their stories directly by meeting with legislators, and oftentimes whether that is down in Springfield or at the district offices in their own communities. But there's also other ways. We do phone banking. You can also email and call directly to the offices. So it's a way where we want not just only us as an organization, but you as a community member to be activists as well. And if we are able to do that great work and it becomes state law, then we want to do the education part. And that's phase 4. That's what this briefing is all about. Make sure that you get the information possible so you know how these laws will work for you, how these laws will impact you. However, we also want to make sure that we understand how to recognize if the law is not working. How do we know who to report to? How do we make it stronger in case people are unaware of it? And so we just always want to make sure that all 4 of these phases are done any point throughout the year. And so here you see this link to our website, the Muslim Civic Coalition.org, and our bills. And you can see all the different types of information going from the different phases to how to connect with legislators and the different bills that we've had since 2021. So I'm going to invite Rachel to talk about something of a great resource that would be very useful for our community. Rachel.
So as part of that education piece, knowing that the coalition has been unique in passing so many different types of bills and supporting so many bills that are really good bills and laws for all faiths, all backgrounds, all aspects of diversity, race, class, faith, not just specifically to Muslim students. Knowing that we're kind of paving the way in that area, we wanted to really make sure that we are providing a toolkit or education that's not only going to help support residents, the community, leaders, administrators, school officials and even legislators in looking at how these laws are being implemented, monitored, and how people are actually carrying out the legislature. And so, one thing we came up with was this idea of having a toolkit so that other states that are looking to also kind of pass the same laws or follow in those footsteps with similar legislation are able to look at those toolkits as well. And so we currently have a few toolkits available. And if you visit the website, muslimciviccoalition.org/toolkits, you'll see 4 toolkits there. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our education toolkit, which has the information about our inclusive athletic attire, the cross-cultural mediation among students, the Faith by Plate Act, which is not passed yet. And I know Gerald is going to share some more information about that before we leave and how we can help get that passed. The contributions and history of faiths in America with the Muhammad Ali Day resolution, teaching equitable Asian American history, and 3 student religious rights laws. You saw some of the pictures of the ones above. And then we have also a step-by-step guide. If you feel like these laws are not being followed in the schools or in the districts that you are working with. As well as we have a second toolkit, Family and Life Toolkit, which has a cultural competency training requirement for healthcare professionals, and MENA, which stands for Middle Eastern North African Representation in Census Type Data Collection, as well as the non-compliance step-by-step action guide. If you visit the website there, we also have 2 toolkits, the History and Contributions of American Muslims Curriculum Guide, which is a great guide to share with schools and districts that are looking to implement the contributions and history of faiths in America law, as well as the Muhammad Ali Day, Ali and King, putting Muhammad Ali Day and Martin Luther King Jr. Day together, lesson plans and discussion circles for adults as well, tools and resources to implement that for the Muhammad Ali Day resolution.
So one of the things, just to also just drive home the point of why these laws are so important, is the reflection of the diversity of the country right within this unique faith community. So there isn't what's considered a supermajority of any one racial or ethnic group. This particular sample, what you see here, is reflective of the Illinois Muslim community. And it is one that is just comparable with many other different researchers and demographers that show how that every racial ethnic group just about that exists in this country is reflected within the faith's population. But uniquely to this is understanding how the legislation that we discussed previously, a lot of the education laws, the Muslim contributions in history, the ones for understanding the diversity when it comes to holidays and not being absent. This should be also be considered when looking at where we as a Muslim community have a voice, and also how we are able to be represented and be fully appreciated no matter where we are in our society. So going to the next slide, this particular one reflects what is for the family and life laws that's represented in the toolkit. This first one where we're looking at the MENA bill, so that one is very unique. Here in Illinois is one of the first states to have this distinct category. Before, people of Middle Eastern or North African descent were characterized as white, and still are on the federal level. If you have completed census form, and if you ever saw the categories for race or ethnicity, Arabs will be counted as white, regardless of how they define themselves. That has been that way since the early 20s. And so because of this, what's been missing from very critical data, whether it is something to build services in one's community, to even the unfortunate likelihood to report hate crimes and Islamophobia, the category of Arabs will always be consumed as white. So this has been a step that's been in making for over a decade here in the state of Illinois, to have this very distinct racial classification. So now when data is being gathered, individuals of men of descent definitely indicate very proudly and very definitively who they are, and therefore we can guarantee more services. Bills that have budgets and appropriations, that means more dollars is going to those communities, but also to making sure that anything that is eroding full access to life, liberty, and happiness for the communities of men of descent, that they can definitely now have the numbers to back that they're here and they're deserving of full access to a full life. The other bill, the Healthcare Cultural Competency Bill. So this one is also very unique with the state of Illinois as one in the nation that, again, has one of the more profiled healthcare systems in the country and possibly the world. There's already a minimum requirement for health professionals to go through some type of training, but we still get countless stories, not only from within the Muslim community, but other faith groups and other communities, regardless of their race or their physical and mental capacities, and others different situations where they're ignored. They are minimized in terms of how they feel pain and suffering. Access to different qualities of air care, it varies more with these communities than others that are more affluent or even that are white. And so one of the things that's driving this particular bill's work is to make sure that more training is required for the distinct communities, and to make sure that is logged with the state and responsible for any of infractions that they are going through more training and possibly whatever other being penalized for any type of discrimination or other types of infractions. Both of these bills were just recently signed into law. So this is something too, along with those 8 other bills that we're proud to say that we were supportive of, whether we directly drafted these bills or our partner organizations such as the Arab American Family Services. These are bills that we gladly support and recognize not only it benefits the Muslim community, but all Illinoisans, and that's a community that would be better off, better for it. So with this next slide, Rachel already kind of described pretty much what the benefits of the toolkit, but to go in a bit deeper, one of the things that's important is not just good for the coalition to tell you what you should know. It's better that we share the information and that you learn for yourself and you become your own advocate for yourself, for your family, for your community, and be able to help spread the word. So these toolkits will be available on our website, and the link will more than likely be shared in the chat. And so it's broken down very simply so you understand why the bill is introduced and why it's important to us. And again, how we can make sure that this will be in effect, implemented in all the right ways. And if not, then we have this next doc, which Rachel referred to as the law non-compliance step-by-step guide. So we always want to make sure that we can go through the proper channels for redress and making sure that whether it's our children in school or even in other situations at work or in other public spaces, there's proper protocols. But if it gets to the point where it's not being resolved, then take it to the following step until there's the legal recourse. And even in the legal recourse, there could be other examples of resolutions such as mediation and discovery, just to make sure that sometimes the laws are being followed. Sometimes it's misunderstanding, but ultimately there are resources, and we want to make sure that you have that. Next slide. So Rachel, I'll let you take this one.
So basically, just to sum everything up, looking at all of our laws and the similarities between all the legislation that not only the coalition has passed, but also has supported, you see a common theme of inclusivity and equitable benefits for all people. Really focusing on validating and affirming and including the identities and lived experiences of the diverse community of residents, specifically our Muslim population as reflected in the data that Gerald shared earlier, but also the larger diverse community with different faith backgrounds as well as racial backgrounds and economic backgrounds as well. These laws are really about validating and affirming the people who are living those experiences, but it's also helping other people who are not part of our faith groups learn about us and our fellow community members as well. So it's really a benefit to us as well as people who don't practice our faiths to learn about us, because we know that when we learn about each other from different diverse backgrounds, that builds understanding and empathy among everyone. And that leads to just more common ground and working together, more allyship for our goals, because we're pulling our allies as we're supporting their goals as well, working together towards that larger good for everyone. Our laws encourage appreciation and affirmation. And most importantly, they really work on reducing prejudice, ignorance, apathy, and any type of bias or discrimination really in our society. So, just really great, ambitious goals that the coalition has been working on through passing these legislative steps and then following up and educating and reaching out to the community to collect more information, more data, more stories, more experiences so we can continue the cycle of protecting our rights.
And one of the benefits that we've had as working in public policy is that we've been hearing ideas and working with partners across the country. There are other communities beyond Illinois that's facing exact same issues and that's looking for similar solutions. And so now we have, for instance, the inclusive athletic attire bill that's been replicated in several states, most recently in Utah. And one of the things that would surprise a lot of individuals is it doesn't matter in terms of whether it's considered a red or blue state. What really matters is the conversations that happen to understand what is at the root of certain issues and how we have the common grounds to make solutions work through law. So this is something that we're very excited to work with new partners, and this is something that we still call on you to make sure that even if you have family members living elsewhere, they too have a voice in making sure that we know what we can do to make our state laws stronger and better for all. And so coming back to these two laws that we worked on in 2023, knows there's a juxtaposition here. We were very excited that both of these bills, the Faith by Plate Act, which is HB 3643, and the Faith Behind Bars Act, HB 3055, both bills passed both the House and Senate in the General Assembly. However, when it came to the ultimate last finish line, we were able to successfully get Faith Behind Bars passed, and that will become law next year on January 1st. However, for our Faith by Plate Act, that was recently vetoed. And so now is on to the next move forward. For these two bills was very important and why we fought so hard. Not just only this year, but they were introduced in 2022 because it drives home some of the notes that Rachel was just speaking of, inclusivity and equity. And definitely when we're talking about human rights and civil rights and social justice, we're talking about making sure that people are valued and appreciated, that whatever their status is in our society, that they are treated just like any other community. And so with Faith by Plate, we're talking about meals for all religious communities, and Faith Behind Bars, that even if someone is incarcerated, that is not taking away their rights to having a chaplaincy, pastoral care, and to gather together to pray. And so while we do have one celebration for Faith Behind Bars, that really definitely does not mean that our work is ended for the Faith by Plate. So you go to the next slide. So this is the one that you guys saw earlier, right before we got officially started, urgent call to action. And this is where we want to make sure that you can share your voices directly with the governor's office. Our chief sponsors in the General Assembly, State Senator Ron Villabalam and State Representative Abdel Nasser Rashid, are definitely behind making sure that we can override this bill. But we also know that it'll be even more powerful when you share your voice. And so we've already started collecting these testimonials. We have over 50 so far. And I want to definitely spotlight one brother who I've known for a long time, and he's a wonderful brother who's very vocal and passionate about this issue, and that's Brother Omar Muhammad. the director and resident khatib and Masjid Fatir. He's also the founder of Bismillah Certified Foods, which is a farm to fork certification organization for premium Zabiha meats. And I want to welcome Imam Omar to share his testimonial and give a sort of encouraging call to action as a leader in our community. Akhi, Omar, can you please share?
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Huwa al-Khatim al-Anbiya wal-Mursaleen. Inshallah, we first, as Muslims, we must recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a divine mandate. When he says, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas, ta'muruna bil-ma'ruf wa tanhawna 'anil munkar wa tu'minuna billah. That you have been brought out of humanity as the best of nations. You encourage what is dignified and forbid decadence, and you believe in Allah. And given the fact that the foods that we are talking about, the meats in particular, one would have thought that this would never happen, but they're coming under attack. Food, period. The poisons that we are coming to discover that are in our normal, food products, the different products in which they use to process the meats, that now to such an extent where salmon is banned in most other countries. The meats that we have, are also banned in some countries. The products that they're using in processing processed meats, such as pink slime and other abhorrent practices that are being used to treat the animals themselves while they are living, engorging them with hormones, all types of very, very reprehensible practices, to the point where the feed even is called for some animals awful, and which is like the most unfortunate, in some cases, the best of it is called awful, and then the worst of it is called awful. So they know it's bad. As obviously some years ago, we had the mad cow disease spate going around because of how meats are being processed and how the animals are being taken care of. And we know that in Islam, this is forbidden. The Prophet ﷺ, he forbade it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also forbade it. And so it's very important that Muslims take the helm of this and recognize our divine mandate with regards to being the best of communities, inshallah ta'ala, of humanity, for the benefit of humanity, not just Muslims, to take the charge in this effort. One of the other things that I'd like to bring to our attention is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in bringing the religion of Islam, which is the reestablishment, as we know, of the way of Abraham, it's called Millat Ibrahim, the path of Abraham alayhi salam, in reminding us we are what we eat, especially on the spiritual plane, that when it's blessed, we have a blessed situation. And it's not for, not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just choosing something willy-nilly. It's something for us to think about. The one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the test for Adam alayhi salam was food. So we have to be aware these are very, very, very foundational things for the Muslims to make sure that we are on board with this, trying to get it established, inshallah ta'ala, if for nothing else, as a sadaqah jariyah for those generations that will come after us in this state, that we would have done the work to, inshallah ta'ala, establish this as the meats to be available in those state-funded institutions, inshallah. So again, I joined the call of this coalition. I have many experiences in this area, subhanAllah, that I can speak to, but suffice it to say that it's something that the Muslims need to get together on, bi'idhnillah, and to coalesce around this movement, inshallah ta'ala, and bi'idhnillah ta'ala, do our best to establish this again as a if nothing else, as a baseline for what we all know is really meat, as opposed to what's made in the lab these days. So, again, I encourage us to do our best and to get out this effort, and to bring people around this to the best of our abilities for the benefit of all, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Thank
Well,
you
yeah.
so much, Imam Omar. And, for us, it's very important. If we can go back to that QR code just one more time, just to make sure. It's only so much that we as advocates, whether we're within this coalition, our partner organizations, to go and meet with legislators at Springfield, it speaks more volumes if you, as the constituents, as the residents of this great state, then make your voice heard, whether you have a direct story or you just have a perspective, or you could be someone who does not necessarily have a religious dietary need, but understand how valuable that will be for your communities to be fully represented. This is a time for you to share. So be sure that you can scan this. Also, you can definitely share with us other ideas that you have. Please keep the ideas coming. Again, our policy agenda, as well as with our friends from across the different communities throughout the state, the way that we develop such a policy agenda is because we listen to you. You are the ones that let us know how life is for you, things that need to be improved, things that need to be strengthened, things that need to change. So be sure to have this. We'll also make sure this is available on our website and our social media. So at any time you have an idea that pops in your head, just go to one of our sites and we'll be happy to definitely consider it strongly, and inshallah possibly make that policy happen. So before we close officially, we definitely want to remind two things. We'll go to the next slide now. So again, as mentioned, this is not going to be the only policy community briefing we have. There's so many others where it's really pressing a lot of where we are as a community, as a state, and as a world. And so we want to remind you that the link for those who definitely register through Eventbrite, that same link is again where you can check off all the different events that you can attend. But by all means, do reach out to us directly, and we definitely want to talk with you and be able to meet with you in your communities to understand what the issues and concerns that you have.